All right, hello everyone, and thank you for tuning in once again to the Black Box Podcast, BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. Now, I wanted to kind of use this opportunity, kind of like the weekly Q&A session. I mean, we do a Q&A session once a week on this channel where I read off your questions and comments and we have a little bit of a discussion. But today I thought we would go about it in kind of a different way. It would kind of come at it from the approach of there are some cases that I would really want to talk about a little bit more with people in the comments sections. And we have a few theories that are going out, and so, some of the cases that I think that we're becoming kind of clearer, and some things are coming much closer to getting some answers. And that would be the mysteries like Brandon Lawson, Jonathan Cruz, Jennifer Fergate, JonBenet Ramsey, and if out of all the cases we've covered on this channel, those are the ones that I would really kind of like to draw attention to. Like if I were just, to just ask people like, hey, what do you think about this? I would ask about Brandon Lawson in San Angelo, Texas, and Jonathan Cruz, also in Texas, Jean Benet from Boulder, and Jennifer Fairgate was the murder, or not really a murder yet. I mean, it's an unconfirmed, it's a mystery open case in Oslo, Norway. When it comes to Brandon Lawson, like I'm going to post some links in the comments section or the description box, and I would just really kind of hope that we can kind of draw some attention to these particular cases. The comments have been coming in about Brandon Lawson, and I almost thought about doing another Q&A. Maybe next week we'll do a Q&A session on the disappearance of Brandon Lawson from 2013 in San Angelo, Texas, heading toward Abilene, Texas. And it's like this is a case that's received a lot of attention online, but for people who aren't super familiar with it, it's like a guy ran out of gas on the side of the road and he's waiting for someone to bring him a gas can. And then, it's like minutes later, there's a 911 call where he's saying that, there's some kind of inaudible message that we've tried to kind of break down. But then perhaps, he's got into a confrontation with somebody, he ran through the woods, there are gunshots fired, and the call ends. And it's like, I would think that we're coming close to kind of getting an understanding on that one from the comments that we've had in so far and the first Q&A we did on Brandon Lawson. What I sort of believe with that one is that Brandon ran out of gas and he approached somebody and that person, got really kind of angry and confrontational with him. And Brandon saw something that he shouldn't have, and that person pulled out a firearm, and then Brandon took off running. That person chased after him. I mean, there are all sorts of theories about it. Like, some people are saying that Brandon saw a dead body in somebody's trunk, as well as, I mean, the short story is, he ran through the woods, someone was chasing him, they shot at least one person, and we hear some gunshots, most likely. I mean, not 100% certain. So people are like, Brandon was most likely murdered on the night that that happened. And the question is now just who did it and who was involved. Was it something like a police cover up like the state troopers? Or was it, just a local individual who who had a bad case of rage and turned on him? And I would really hope that we can discuss that one a little bit more because I think we're coming close to getting some answers. When it comes to somebody like Jonathan Cruz, this is one that it's like it's one of the few times when I've actually tried to reenact what would have happened if I had been involved with one of these true crime incidents. I think I did that with Elisa Lamb, when I'm actually just standing up at home and nobody's around and I'm trying to retrace all the steps. Jonathan Cruz would be another one. He was somebody who was found dead in his apartment. I mean, his ex-girlfriend was apparently in the room, and the question is whether or not his ex-girlfriend Brenda fired a gun that fired the shot that killed him, or was it a suicide or an accidental death? And in that one, most people are thinking that it was indeed a murder, that his ex-girlfriend shot him in the chest while he was in bed. And I actually don't believe that. I believe that the case of Jonathan Cruz is an accidental death that resulted from someone making a bad decision to place a gun against his chest and pull the trigger thinking his gun was unloaded when it wasn't. And there's some reasons for that in the upload that I did on that one. And That's one of the few things when I've actually kind of retraced his movements, like, and because he had a nightstand on the left side of his bed. I used to have one on mine. I was like, now what would this be like? And Brandon also liked to, no, sorry, this is Jonathan now. Jonathan Cruz liked to sleep on the left side of the bed the same way that I did. And I was just like, okay, so let's try this out. And I really do believe that that was just a horrible accident. And most people don't think like that. They really want to implicate his ex girlfriend in some type of murder. But moving on to, I mean, I'll post a link to that one as well. Moving on to Jennifer Fergate. This is an old case. This is back from the 90s. It's one of the most infamous unsolved cases in Norway. And Jennifer Fergate was most likely a foreign national who was in Norway. We're not sure why, but the upload that I did, I kind of really theorized that there was a woman who was from another country, most likely Germany, who was, visiting Oslo. I really believe that she went there for some sort of romantic encounter, and that ended up horribly wrong. And she checked herself into a hotel under an alias and died from a single gunshot wound to the head. It's most likely a suicide, but the issue with Jennifer Fergate and Jonathan Cruz is both of these people, if they did commit suicide, there is both cases, no powder residue is found on the hand that pulled the trigger. There's just no powder residue and very little blood spatter. I mean, with Jonathan Cruz, it was done, the gunshot went through his kind of sternum, I mean, or maybe even in the rib cage area. But I mean, the point is, it was not a headshot. Whereas Jennifer Fairgate awkwardly held the pistol in the center of her forehead. The barrel of the gun would have been touching the center of her forehead, and if she did commit suicide, she would have had to have squeezed the trigger with her thumb. I think that is, well, I don't really hear many suicides like that. Not to mention no powder residue, no blood on her hand as well, if I recall. So it's like Jonathan Cruz and Jennifer Fairgate are two cases, that I just really want to discuss more. And from some of the material in the uploads that I've done, I would say that I think we're getting close. I mean, if anyone were to listen to those, I think we're really getting close to getting some serious answers. Jonathan Cruz, I feel, is almost a more complete picture, whereas Jennifer Fairgate, I would still have some very large questions. I think we're getting close to understanding about what exactly happened on the night that she died. But I mean, it's going to be a very difficult thing to do to, get the identity of someone. One of these years, I might actually have to go to Oslo and investigate that one in person before you could find out really who she was, where she came from. But I do stick by that theory right now that there was a romantic encounter that went wrong, and I'll post a link to the Oslo Plaza upload I did about Jennifer Fairgate. And the last one we have is JonBenet Ramsey. Now, I don't believe that I have solved the case of JonBenet Ramsey. No, I don't think so at all. I mean, I can't really make that claim. That's too bold of a claim to make when you're just, this tiny little channel on YouTube with a black box. But it's like, I think we have a lot of answers in that one. Now, I did an entire upload once about a kind of user-generated documentary from the YouTuber's name is just JonBenet Ramsey, but he wrote a book called Little Girl Blue, and blue is spelled BLU. There is no E on the end. Little Girl Blue. And he argued some of the same things that I had been discussing on the podcast. I did like maybe 3 or 4 uploads about JonBenet, and I was talking about the fact that JonBenet Ramsey was murdered by an intruder in the house. And he was actually coming to the same conclusions, except, he has way more deep dive research. And I thought it was a joke at first. Like, I thought it was just like someone trolling people, like he wasn't really being serious or genuine. But then I found all the primary source documents that he's referencing in his documentary. He puts them up on the screen. And I was like, wow, like we're really coming to kind of the same conclusion. This is actually a serious film. It's just a very awkward presentation. And even like I told you, he wrote a book called Little Girl Blue, and his name is Sweetie B, Sweetie B-E-E, Sweetie B. And I was like, is this real? But at the same time, you're like, it's an actual argument, an interpretation of the evidence, and he has all the primary source documents, and we're coming to a roughly similar conclusion. And that was like, I had no idea who he was or what his book was about before I, like, I knew about it after I started JonBenet Ramsey. And it's not someone who's on par with Lawrence Schiller, who wrote Perfect Murder, Perfect Town. That one's way more detailed, and that's a thick book. My copy of Perfect Murder, Perfect Town is like 700 some odd pages. It's a very big one. But I do support the intruder theory for JonBenet. And once again, I'll post a link to that, and that would be another one that I would really like to discuss. And I would just say, though, that when it comes to true crime, I did some uploads about Madeleine McCann recently, and I've received a lot of comments because I'm saying some bold things in that one that I do genuinely believe with Madeleine McCann. I believe that an accident happened after, sort of like Madeleine McCann, of course, the girl who disappeared from Praia de Luz, Portugal, in 2007, I believe it was. Then it's like, I mean, I believe that there was some incident that involved the parents giving their kids sleep aid drugs, and that kind of led to a tragedy. And it's like, I do admit, though, the stuff I said about Madeleine McCann is much less polished than the 4 uploads that I've just talked about now, about Brandon Lawson and Jonathan Cruz, JonBenet Ramsey, and Jennifer Fergate. The Madeleine McCann stuff, I mean, I do believe what I'm saying, and I don't think that we're too far off, because Gonzalo Amaral, who, has like one of the kind of investigators from Portugal that was involved with this, is once again coming to a very similar conclusion that I did, like completely independent interpretations and different methods. Of course, he would be doing it firsthand, and I would be doing it secondhand through the kind of social commentary approach, like listening to documentaries and podcasts and news article and reading news articles. But I do admit, though, that like I'm not an expert on Madeleine McCann the way some people are, and a lot of people have, even kind of corrected some of my information on that one, and that's good. That is good. I mean, when I put out uploads about theories, it doesn't mean that I know everything and that I think my theory is perfect. Absolutely not. I could not do it without excellent people in the comments section who are kind of contributing. And they're like, hey, wait a second, what about this? And that's the kind of stuff that we need. And that's kind of what I'm hoping to deal with when it comes to cases like Brandon Lawson, Jonathan Cruz, Jennifer Fergate, and JonBenet Ramsey, because it would be amazing, if a channel like this could actually solve a true crime case, like one of these major unsolved mysteries. I mean, if we actually had any sort of budget one day or something like that, then we could actually, visit some of these places and conduct some first-hand investigations, because that's what people are saying about Brandon Lawson, the first case I've mentioned. They're just like, I believe the most recent comment I got about Brandon Lawson was just like, somebody needs to use some drones and search a particular area, where his cell phone was last pinged. And I was like, I wish I had the funds to do that. I mean, I would, definitely. We talked about going to Oslo to investigate Jennifer Fergate. Jonathan Cruz was one that was covered by Sheila Wysocki. And I really thought that she has a podcast out there called Without Warning, which is about the death of Lauren Agee. And I really thought that Sheila Wysocki was going to be covering the Jonathan Cruz case and the Lauren Agee case together. Like, I mean, she would kind of, do some uploads about Jonathan Cruz, some about Lauren Agee. And, I mean, I'm glad she's covering Lauren's death, because we've done about 5 uploads now. 5 or 6 uploads on the death of Lauren Agee from Hendersonville, Tennessee. And that's a horrible tragedy as well. A girl just went to a festival and then she was found dead in the water. And the giant question is murder, accident, suicide. Like, I mean, it's all the same questions. It's just horrible tragedy for their family. And, there's just both of the cases, though, that we just mentioned, Jonathan Cruz and Lauren Agee, are both about people involved who are very suspicious. The only difference is that we mentioned Jonathan Cruz's ex-girlfriend Brenda. We have one suspect who could be a perpetrator in that case, whereas there are three potential perpetrators in the Laura Nagy case, their names being Aaron Lilly, Chris Stout, and Hannah Palmer. And I mean, I'm really kind of leaning to the fact that Lauren Agee was an accidental death, but that's one of those things, like I would almost call it just a gut instinct. I can't even really certify that. I mean, well, no, I can't certify it. If I could, then I would just be like, then the case would just be solved, and we wouldn't have to, go through anything. I mean, we would just be like, here's what happened. But I I don't really feel that I have all of the physical evidence in place to support the fact that Lauren Agee died of an accidental death. But I mean, if you ever encounter some uploads about that, I mean, that I've done on that, I would love to hear more comments about that one. With Jonathan Cruz, though, that was one of the few times I do have to insist that I kind of reenacted some of the movements that would have happened, and I really do believe that that was indeed an accidental death. And I mean, you might be sounding like a broken record, but no, I believe that Jennifer Fergate was a suicide that had just peculiarities about it. And JonBenet Ramsey, I said, I believe she was murdered by an intruder, and there were at least three people in the house when she died. Maybe more, but at least three people were in the house when JonBenet was murdered. We're talking three different intruders, two men and one woman. And once again, I'll post a link to that upload. And Brandon Lawson, it's like I think we're getting close to understanding what happened. But still, the giant question mark for that one is who? Who was the perpetrator? Was it a civilian, or was it actually someone in law enforcement? And I mean, not that law enforcement people aren't civilians. I should have been kind of more careful with my words. I mean, I meant like a uniformed officer on duty as opposed to someone who wasn't. I mean, well, anyway. I'll post some links to these things. Once again, the reason why I did this upload today is I would just like to kind of draw attention to four cases that are kind of really, I feel we're getting some warm leads on, and I think that I would love to, if we had a little bit more discussion. I mean, in the past, I know I'm probably not the best at giving sort of a 2-minute synopsis of a kind of sometimes, 15, 20-minute, 30-minute segment I did in the past, but if you've made it this far in the recording, thank you so much for listening. And once again, I'll post some links, and that's all for now. And thank you so much.